I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 83. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. My head is swimming with ideas that I want to share on this podcast with you, and it's all sparked by the remarkable things that are happening by clients in Mastery Group and doing the sprint and my private clients. Everyone is on a path that they are deliberately choosing. They are doing the challenging work of continuing to show up even when things don't really go the way they had planned. And there's benefits that end up happening. It's not overnight. But I just had really great coaching call with sprinters and Mastery Group members. And one of the things that came out on that call was someone who's been working on the process of Monday Map, Friday Wrap, which is a process that we use to focus on how you spend your time and how you plan to spend your time and then honoring that plan. And one of the participants has been working extremely diligently on this and has hit really frustrating points, and it's taken them longer than what they wanted to really make this kind of headway. But now there's light at the end of the tunnel, and this process has force functioned delegation, has force functioned basically a wake up call that you can't keep going like you're going. Like you're going to run things into the ground yourself first, probably. So this person, every week on Friday, they do their Friday wrap. Their office has an incredible view, and the time that they do the Friday wrap is sunset. They took a snapshot of this and posted it to the group of the desk, the journal that's open, the postcard that we give clients to help them stay on track and remember exactly how to flow through the process. That's sitting there. And there's a little bourbon sitting there and this sunset that's amazing. And it's this sacred space that they create to do their Friday wrap, which is really to evaluate how they did in the week and then start for planning for next week. And we brought that up. And we were talking about how envious we are of that beautiful picture. And there's many of us are inspired to really make that a beautiful space. And in talking about the changes that are happening for them as they're implementing this process week over week over week, they said when they walk in at home on Friday nights now, their spouse says, "You're like a different human coming home for the weekend." And that, to me, you guys, that is the win. Of course, there's so many benefits of doing it. The fact that you're getting a lot off of your plate. Like I said, it force functions delegation. It force functions a wake-up call. It gets you really honest. It gets you on point. It gets you organized. And there's so many benefits that come from all of that. One of them happens to be that it really does allow you to have more presence with those closest to you, with the relationships that you care about the most. And that changes everything. I have seen that in my own life at different periods, and hearing that from this participant just melted me, because that's the stuff that matters. Yes, we want to build this firm. Yes, we want to do all of the things and hit all of our goals and achieve the vision that we have for the firm, but not at the cost of the most important things in our lives. And I genuinely think that's something to be taken into consideration as you grow, because if you don't, I mean, you can grow for growth's sake, but it will be at the cost of things unless you're being very intentional about doing it in a holistic way and doing it on your terms. And that is what this person is doing. And it just melted me. And I wanted to share it with you guys. From that conversation stemmed some ideas that I want to share with you. And those will be coming out in podcasts in the future. But I've just never been so inspired in my work by everyone I'm surrounded by. You know, rising tides raise all boats. That's what it feels like is happening inside of Velocity work. I have a deep appreciation for it, and I want to share the inspiration with you all. So my head is just full of these ideas. They will come out one at a time, but we're going to start with one today. And I'm going to give you a little warning that I think today's rantier than normal. But bear with me and hang in there, because there's some information that I think is really useful to hear. Even if you understand this already, it's a good reminder. I need these reminders for myself. So stay tuned in with me, okay? And there's a few different places I got inspiration for this. One of the major places was on Clubhouse on Monday. Joey Vitale and I host a room on Clubhouse every Monday. The room is titled Law Firm Owners, How to Stay on Track for What You Want. This week we had a really great group, and there were a few people that came up to speak and ask questions. And then of course there was Joey and I, but Mike Whalen came on, and I really like it when Mike Whalen talks. I just do. I think his ideas are brilliant. I think his point of view is brilliant. And one of the questions that he posed was how important is creating a bit of a social structure that will honor and help you hold the changes that you make as you grow. And he gave an example of someone who'd been to a conference and was gifted the gift to go to this conference. And this person went to the conference. They really needed they were so excited. They needed the information. They really wanted the information. And then several months afterwards, in a follow-up call, it was discovered that this person was really miserable, kind of back where they started, and hadn't really implemented the things that they learned. And so, there's this high that happens when you're at an event like that, a conference that just gets you on fire. It's an emotional high. There is all this belief and this hope and this gratitude and this motivation and inspiration and determination, these are feeling states. It's almost like you're flooded with feeling states when you attend something like this, or when you achieve something that really is meaningful to you. And then you go back to your life, the day to day, and what's very easy to happen is that fades. But here's the thing about it fading. People think that an event made them feel a certain way. What we don't stop to think, even if you know this intellectually, when I say this, I really want you to think about your own life, because I teach this and it still happens to me. This is a very normal human thing a very normal position to take, is probably a better way to say it. The event did not make you feel a certain way. You do not feel a certain way because of an event. You feel a certain way because of what you are thinking. And when you are at the event, there are all kinds of things that are running through your head. There are all kinds of thoughts that you are having that is producing a feeling state of excitement, of hope, of belief, of relief. I don't know what it is for you, but when you're there, and we can just use excitement, you're probably thinking things like, this is totally possible. Look, they've done it. I can do it too. Oh, that system is going to make all of the difference. There's going to be all of these things that you're thinking, and that's what produces the feeling state. And from that feeling state, you feel on cloud nine, right? And in many respects, there's all these emotions that are running high. It's because of the slew of thoughts that you're thinking and the type of thoughts that you're thinking that's creating that. It is not the event. And here's how we know this is true, is because there's someone else in the audience that is cynical and is having thoughts like, well, that's dumb, or this is not going to work. I know this is all just going to be an emotional high, and that's what these events create. And then this isn't going to fuel anything. They have a different perspective. And there's someone else in the audience of that exact same conference thinking things like, I don't have a team, so I can't really do all these things. I don't know if I can build what they're talking about. I don't know. All this self-doubt is being created by what they're thinking. The same event, they're all watching the same thing, and they have totally different thoughts, which means they have a totally different feeling state. The same event. The circumstance, the event, did not create how they feel. Their thinking created how they feel. So make sure you're giving credit to the right thing. The credit goes to the brain inside the human, not the event. Sure, the event is great. It may easily influence some people to think easier, happier thoughts and more promising thoughts, but not everybody. It's not the event. It is the brain. Now, the reason I'm going into this is because the results that you get start with your thinking. If you have this really high level, high quality type of thinking, then you create this high level, high quality feeling state that produces, like from that feeling state, you take a very specific set of actions. And they're probably productive and high quality type of actions that lead you closer to the result that you really want. But the results come because of your perspective, because of how you've been thinking. I've talked about this before on the podcast, and so it might feel like I'm just trying to have another way to talk about this, but it's just the truth. So what happens is for the skeptical person or the cynical person that's there and just having their kind of thoughts, imagine for a second that this is all playing out for them as well. It's stemming from the way that they're thinking about things, from the thoughts that are running through their head, which, by the way, don't happen to them. They have control over that. You could consciously decide to think something on purpose. And so whether they're consciously trying to decide to think this on purpose or not, it's just kind of what the brain is doing, just being cynical. Then they are producing a very specific feeling state. And from that feeling state, they're going to take or not take a specific kind of actions. And then they're going to produce for themselves some specific kind of results that's right in line with what they've been thinking. And it's the same is true. And so it's almost like we give credit to things outside of us for producing our feeling states or producing our results even. But it isn't the event. It is you. It is your brain. And the more that you use your brain instead of letting it use you, the more in line with results you will be, the results that you are wanting. Now let's come back to, for a second, why it's important to have a post-win plan. Or another way to think about this is a post-event plan. An event can be something you attend. It can be a marker that you hit in your business. It's kind of an event, right? So, but it's the post-event planning. And it doesn't necessarily mean the plan, I would suggest, isn't just, I'm going to do these things. I would start with, I'm going to think this on purpose, and I'm going to feel this way on purpose. If you want to hold a level of excitement, and maybe it's not sheer excitement, like it's kind of weird to be running and operating at like a high, like a 10 on a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of excitement. But maybe you just want to feel productive and on purpose or intentional. You want to feel intentional. Well, what are you going to have to think in order to create that feeling state of being intentional? It isn't the action you take, and it's not the event around you that causes it. It is what is running through your head. So be cognizant of how you want to think and how you want to feel, even when the shiny goes away. Even when that thing that you were caught up in, the event, the win, the success that you experienced, that fleeting moment will go away. And your job is to think on purpose and feel on purpose. And from there, from that feeling state, you take the right kind of action that you're wanting yourself to take. Don't do it backwards. If you do it backwards, you're always going to be at the whim of things external to you. And that doesn't hold up. That's not sustainable. And especially as a business owner, you all know the ups and the downs. If you and the way you feel is at the whim of the world or the whim of how successful each day was or each week was or each quarter was in your business, then you're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to run yourself into a brick wall because you're so deflated and frustrated because you're exhausted. You are allowing your feeling states to be dictated by what's happening around you. And that's only because you aren't consciously deciding to think in a certain way that will produce a certain feeling state. Now, again, I cannot stress enough that the goal is not to feel positive all of the time. I've been talking more about this, and I'm going to keep talking more about this. We have this range of emotions that is just part of the human experience. And when people's goal is to try to be happy all the time or positive all of the time, that isn't realistic, because that's not part of the deal here as a human. The human experience is, and what I love is there's a woman I really look up to that says it's 50-50. Just for a second, go with me. There's a circle, and if you split it down the middle, 50% is on the positive end of the spectrum emotionally, and 50% is on the negative end. It doesn't mean that it's the 50% that's negative is all terrible. There is some terrible, really painful stuff on the negative side, but that's part of the deal. That's what we signed up for here on planet Earth. And so when everybody's trying to always feel so positive, and if they don't feel so positive all the time, they think something has gone wrong, and it hasn't. It's just a signal to you to look at how you're thinking, look at your perspective, and take responsibility for how you feel. And there's going to be moments it doesn't feel appropriate or right to feel positive about what's happening. That there is maybe some grief in something. There is it makes sense and it feels right to feel disappointed by something. And then you can redirect yourself more quickly, because you realize, no, I'm thinking this way on purpose, and it's creating this feeling state. And that's okay. I'm going to sit with this. And when you do that, it allows you more quickly to be able to choose a different thought that will produce a different feeling state, sort of moving up on the emotional scale. And you can choose, that's available to you too. But it's more about knowing you have a choice and taking ownership for how you feel in any given moment is a really beautiful thing. And so it seems like we're going on a tangent here, but really this has everything to do with after an event. And so let's just use the conference, stay with that example. You go to a conference and you're on a high, and then you go back to your real life and you kind of let default take over, just the mode that you were in prior. And people want to say this is just life taking over, but you sink back into what your default was, instead of waking up every day and saying, oh, I'm going to remind myself of what I was thinking at that conference. I'm going to hold that belief even when life is normal. I'm going to remind myself to think that on purpose every day, maybe multiple times a day. And so if you were thinking something at the conference, like, this is totally possible. My goals, I will get there. I don't necessarily know exactly how that's going to unfold or when I'm going to hit my goals, but I'm going to get there. Maybe your thought is something like, oh my gosh, systems and processes are going to free me. If that's what you were thinking at the conference, your job is to hold that thought pattern even after the conference. When you hold that thought pattern, when you remind yourself of that daily, instead of just slipping back into life, you decide that that's not going to happen. You have to keep that alive. Then when you think those things, like these systems and processes are going to free me, then you feel hopeful or whatever, right? That sparks for you, whatever emotional state that sparks for you. And then from that place, you take specific action. Whereas if you go back into life and you don't hold the thought pattern that you had while you were at the event, of course, you're not going to feel the same way. Those thoughts at the event were producing how you felt. The event was not producing it. So in your real life, after the event has happened, it is your job to hold that thought pattern, to hold those thoughts intentionally, to cling to those thoughts intentionally, so that, and think them deliberately, so that you feel a version of the same thing, this hope or belief. It may not be as animated, right? But it's still there. And from that place, you create action. If you don't, you go back into your own life and you kind of you allow yourself to slip back into default mode. And I'm talking about your brain. Your brain goes back to default mode. And then, of course, from there, you start to feel frustrated and stuck. And then it just spins off this whole new slew of thoughts. See, it's just not possible. Real life it's too hard to overcome these things. Like that's what's going to happen if you don't take the reins. So when I talk about a post-win plan, It needs to be a post-win thought plan and a post-win feeling plan. Because if you can get those right and get those more in line with something that's going to be truly from there, you can be productive. You're going to set yourself up for a better game. Now, it's not impossible, even if you're having negative thinking and you are feeling negative, you can still get yourself back into the positive. But the whole thing about having a plan is so that things can stay as smooth as possible. The idea is that you work your plan. And so a post-win plan, a post-event plan is, how do I hold this state, this mental state and this feeling state? How do I hold this? That is my job. Because when you are there, you're on the right track. You're on a good path. When you allow your mental state and your feeling state to take a nosedive or to go back to a default without being conscious and being intentional with it, then of course the action isn't going to line up. So part of your plan, any plan you make, it's really good to think through the mental plan and the feeling plan so that it's easier to stay on track. And I don't think there's enough conversation around this. And I think that we oftentimes give credit to the world for how we feel or to someone else for how we feel, and don't give someone else that much power. They don't have that. No one person, no one event has the power to make you feel a certain way. It may influence your thinking, right? But still own that. Your feeling state is created by how you're thinking. And there's someone else in the audience that isn't thinking the same thing that you are in terms of reaction to the event that you're at. They don't have the same thoughts about it. And so they're going to create a different feeling state for themselves and different actions and a different result. So don't give credit to the event. It isn't the event. It is you and how you're thinking about all of it. And how do you hold that belief pattern afterwards? That is your job. That is your job. That is job number one. If you can do that, then things will fall into place. So now I feel like I'm just talking and kind of going in circles. I think you guys get it. But this is really important. And I don't want any of you to give up your power and wonder why things aren't working. It starts with your head. It just does. And I know people want to hear something more nuts and boltsy than that. It would be a lie. Are there actions you can take that help influence the way that you think? Yeah, but honestly, that's going backwards. Start with your head. Start with your head. Your mental state matters immensely. It is the point of power for you. And so don't try to shortcut it or take a back door. Just go there. Go there and decide to think something on purpose. Now, let's talk for a second about the action piece, because there is an action piece. And like I said a minute ago, if you try to start there, it's not the end of the world, but it's really kind of backwards. So here's what to do. When you are thinking about what thoughts do you want to think on purpose, what reminders do you want to tell yourself that isn't default, but you do believe them, you just need to keep them top of mind. And then, okay, from that place, will that create the feeling state that you want? If you want to feel determined, if you want to feel productive, what do you need to think in order to generate that feeling state? And then from that feeling state, what kind of actions do you take? And I really want you to play this out. If you are feeling, if the desired feeling state, the driving feeling state is excited about the future, or determined, or productive, or on track. Like, these are all very common things that I hear and that I practice on purpose. So if you're feeling any one of those, what kinds of actions do you take from that place? And really think this out. Some of the actions will be internal in the firm, like in the business kind of work. Some of them will be on the business kind of work. Some of it will be creating community for yourself in order to facilitate and help make it a little easier to keep the same thoughts looping that you want to have looping. If you don't have a community it can be, you still have control of your brain. So it's the community doesn't make the difference, but it can be easier to be reminded of that high quality thinking that you want to keep. It can be easier to be reminded of what it takes, like what state you need to be in to keep on track. And so it can be a really self-serving loop and success-serving loop. But you just don't want to get it backwards that the community is what makes you think a certain way. That's not true. And I really want everybody to really own that for themselves. So if one of the actions that makes sense, that stems from that generated feeling state of feeling determined or feeling excited or feeling on track, feeling productive, if one of the actions that you do take from that state is to be a part of a community or hire a coach or take part in a challenge or, whatever it is, then that 100% makes sense. Like, do it. There is action to be taken, but you want to take it from a feeling state on purpose. And then through that action, you create results for yourself that stem from the action that you took. And that action that you took stems from that feeling state that you generated. And what generated that feeling state was what you were thinking, the way that you're thinking, your perception. That it starts with that. It starts with your head. So that's why I wanted to teach it this way, because would it be really easy for me to come on here and just say, you know what, post-event, you need a plan. And the plan is to sign up for a program or to be a part of a community or have an accountability partner or take part in a challenge. But if I do that, it's almost like giving you the fish instead of teaching you how to fish. And I am not interested in giving you solutions that you don't understand how to recreate for yourself. That is what this is about. It starts with how you are thinking, what you are thinking. That produces a feeling state. And from that feeling state, you take specific action. From that action, you produce specific results for yourself. And it is this beautiful loop that keeps going because you create these results for yourself. And then you have thoughts about the results you created, which is like, that is awesome. There's pride. You feel pride. And then you take another set of actions and you get yourself the next set of results. It's this loop that keeps playing out. And that's what can happen when you really do things and you understand things from the right way, starting with the brain and then moving down towards the results. So again, I am all about plugging into coaching, to accountability. Clearly, I mean, that's my business. And I have that for myself. But I want to make it clear that if I just came on this podcast and said after an event, you need to have this something put into place for yourself, meaning a coach or some social accountability, something to keep you on track. That's a tactic. That's an action. That's an action that you take. If you don't start above that, which is your brain, then you're always going to be chasing something. And you're always going to have this problem of having to have something outside of you to hold you accountable. And I think accountability, I choose external accountability on purpose, but it's not because so that it fixes something. It's so that it enhances the work that I'm doing, that my brain is like, I'm working to kind of hold the standard of a quality, high level thinking. And I'm committed to feeling a very certain way, driven, determined, excited, there's different things that I think through for myself. And then I figure out, what action do I take? If I'm excited about the future, what action do I take? And for me, I do plug in. I do have a coach. I do want the accountability. It feels like the right action to take from this feeling state that I'm creating. And it just kind of creates this awesome cycle upwards of producing better, high quality thinking, and it perpetuates that, and it perpetuates a good feeling state. And it doesn't stay there. Of course, there's dips, and I have bad days and all of that, and so do my clients. But I understand the truth of how this is all working, and I don't think that the things outside of me are creating it. I know it all stems from my brain and how I'm thinking about things, and that's the most important. And so you have to start there. And when you, after an event or after you hit a big milestone or whatever, the thing that I think is most important is to plan, what you want to be thinking, what beliefs you want to hold that you actually had a glimpse of, or that you had at the event, or when you, at the conference. And then from there, you can decide like, okay, I want to hold on to that. Why? What feeling state does that produce? Well, it produces this deep excitement, or it produces this feeling of determination. And then from there, you can think about all the things that you need to, or you could do, the actions you could take. And some of that's going to be very tactical things inside of the business, and maybe personal processes for yourself, but also take into consideration what kind of accountability sounds great, sounds fun and supportive of all of this, to just continue this feeling state, continue these thoughts that I'm thinking. What will reinforce that? What can I do to reinforce that? And plug into those things. All right, everyone, have a beautiful week, and I will see you here next Tuesday. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.